Hey everyone. Well, here we are, or here I am, back again. See if I can stir things up some more. I love my job. Mission, excuse me. All right. Now, I have another video here that I wanted to do, and this one kind of coincides with one I did just previously called Twin Flames, Can I Have More Than One? And I wanted to kind of make mention here uh, that the video I'm going to be doing today is going to be called From Emotional Resistance to Heart-Centered Existence, which is somewhat of a long title. But one of the things that I have noticed lately is we have a lot of people that Nicole and I are exposed to in our daily events as we kind of do this stuff on a 7-day basis. We're continually being exposed to people who are coming up with endless amounts of emotional issues, patterns, vibrations, if whatever you want to call them. An example, case in point of this is people who have had, say for an example, a heart center awakening, the activation of the heart center chakra, in combination with a Kundalini awakening. And what's happened is the proverbial hits the fan. They find themselves getting into, on the negative side of the expression, if I can put it that way, and experiencing the dark night of the soul, if I can put it in those terms. The dark night of the soul concludes anxiety attacks, panic attacks, probably the same thing, depression, all kinds of different parts of their mental self and their emotional self going into a complete state of chaos. All of this has happened and still happening to a great many people, even years after, in some cases, that they've had their initial heart center awakening. And what I've noticed lately, and I want to kind of explain this in this way, is I'm not passing judgment on anyone. I like to observe people and what they're going through. I like to see and try to understand, and then to explain it in some kind of way. But a lot of people are misinterpreting what I'm saying and think I'm being judgmental or arrogant or whatever. And I don't think they're seeing the perspective that I'm trying to present to them. And sooner or later, hopefully they'll get it. But what I have noticed here is this process of transitioning from the old emotional experience of existence, and I'm going to throw in a phrase here of love, relationship, and sexuality, and moving into the heart center existence. For the general population that is experiencing it, it's now becoming, as I mentioned, a process that can be clearly defined and clearly labeled with certain aspects that take place at an individual level, but at society's level also at the same time. And especially, I've noticed in the twin flame community, and the reason that I bring this up is because I noticed in a last video that I did that actually the title was Twin Flames, Can I Have More Than One? And what I was doing was I was actually giving information that Nicole and I had experienced over 20 years of counseling twin flames in varying degrees of their awakening stages. And one of the things that we noticed was that our own belief systems were challenged right off the bat, which didn't take very long. About 4 to 5 years into it, we started noticing a tendency where some of these twin flames that originally came together and we had counsel had split apart, gone in different ways, and suddenly they're reconnecting with someone else of very similar or close to vibration. So what's happened is when we made the last video, and I noticed this as a pattern also, is we tried to present the information based on the fact of the experience we had over a 20-year period. But what happened is I think a whole pile of people took it totally out of context and took it as I was making an attack and an affront on the twin flame community, which I wasn't doing. So this tells me that there still is a lot of emotional resistance to letting go of our preconceived ideas and belief systems about many things. And when this comes up, what happens is this: to counteract, if I can put it that way, the belief systems that are deeply embedded within the etheric body, but also in the emotional body. And obviously, I'm very, very good at triggering people in their emotional body, which is probably part of my mission, and I love it. I love triggering you people. The more you trigger, the more you're going to hate me, the more you're going to be upset with me, and the more I'm going to be happy. Because, like it or not, if I'm not going to do it, someone else who is giving information is going to do it anyway, because we're going through a time of change and we're going through a time of evolution at this particular point. The process that I'm talking about is shifting and being willing at some particular point, at least to take a look at our own established belief systems, if I can put it that way, and be willing, or at least be open to perhaps listening to or absorbing information that may make you uncomfortable. I have found myself in this situation several times in the last year or two. One of them came when the reincarnation thing came up for me personally, and the next one came up just recently with the issue here of, can you have more than one twin flame? And I was used to be of the belief that this was not possible, couldn't happen. No way, Jose, not there. But I've seen it too many times repetitiously happen to too many people not to give credence to it and accept it as I needed to change my belief system. So in reality, in order to do that, what has happened is some kind of a process has happened within a lot of us. And I'm going to describe to you a rather strange phenomenon that I think a lot of you are going to relate to. I'll get into the actual, the mental parts and the anxiousness, the panic attacks, the depression, and that in a moment. But I want to talk to you about the actual energetic process of this as it happens to a person. And I'm going to use myself as the guinea pig here. And I'm sure some of you are going to relate to this. Over the last 3 years, always beginning somewhere about this time of year, which is now February the 7th, according to my computer's calendar here. And what happens is I start out with this weird churning area in the solar plexus chakra. It's like being nauseous, but you don't feel sick, all right? You have this churning that goes there. It kind of makes you feel like you're nauseous, hungry, and you can feel this sensation of inner churning in your stomach. When it began 3 years ago, it caught me totally by surprise and actually caused me some digestive problems at the same time. And I had to modify my food intake, which I've still had to do. So what's happened is the very first thing that I learned was we are evolving past the point of consuming all of the old foods that we used to eat. Some of us don't like it. I didn't like it either. I had to let go of a lot of foodstuffs. Again, I believed that I wanted and needed and liked these foods. However, the evolutionary process working through my body is saying, no, we don't want, need, or desire these foodstuffs anymore. And Melvin, you're hung up on a belief system that this is what you want, think, and you need to do. Foodstuffs, belief system, right there. So what happened is the process lasted for about, I think in the first year, it lasted about 3 to 4 weeks, and then it disappeared. And I discussed it with Nicole, and she had said to me, she said she had the same thing going on, but hers wasn't quite as intense as mine because I'm very empathic to the point of being overly empathic or sensitive, you want to call it that. And then the next year, the same process began again. And it went through the nausea, the spinning in the solar plexus. But this time, there was a change that took place in that cycle of evolution. I'm not going to call this part of spiritual awakening or ascension because I don't buy it in those terms. I'm going to call it part of the evolutionary process. The change was last year was that when it happened, I didn't go into a state of shock or panic about it and think there was something wrong with me. I remembered it from the first year. So what I did was when I started getting the periods when the nausea was getting really intense in the solar plexus area, I would go and meditate, thinking or being guided that that would help. And it did, because a new thing started to happen. Periodically, when I would be breathing during the course of a meditation, what would happen suddenly, I'd be in a kind of a rhythmic, nice of breathing exercise. And then all of a sudden, I would kind of double clutch, if I can describe it that way, and go. And when I did, it was automatic. I didn't really initiate it. It kind of happened on my own. And when it did, that kind of, all of a sudden, all of this churning, vibrating, nauseous, spinning energy in the solar plexus moved up into the heart center, and kapow! I had this wonderful orgasmic feeling go all across the chest, expand out either side of the body, and my heart center got bigger, and I'm feeling very euphoric, and I'm into it. And I'm starting to say to myself, well, okay, that was a spontaneous thing, and it happened all by itself, but this is all has to do with energy. There's nothing mentally here, there's nothing emotional here, and there's nothing etheric here. It's all an energy. It's energy-based experience that's happening in my body. I think some of you will relate to this, and I'm sure you will. And if you do, please comment so on the video so I can get a little bit of a head count, if you will. And then what happened this year? The same process started to happen again. As a matter of fact, it started about 2 or 3 weeks, about 2 weeks ago, the process started again. And what happened is I remembered the 2 previous years as to what was going on. And I'm starting to figure this out. Hey, Mel, we got a happening going on here. What's happening is energetically, and from a soul, I'm going to use the word soul body here just for the sake of convenience. Other people want to call it other things, that's okay. Just for the sake of that experience, I got this energetic experience going on in my body. And then I started to think, well, correspondingly, then I'm probably bringing up energetically old templates, belief systems, emotional triggers, stuff from the etheric body, stuff from the digestive system. A whole lot of stuff is coming up to be recycled and retuned through the heart center chakra. And then that energy, I experience it as being reassimilated back through the system, being the soul body or the soul energy of what is going on. And I started to realize that I was not going through a spiritual awakening at all. I was going through an evolutionary process. And the process is continuing. Now, to go back and give it form, because when you have something happen at an energetic level, somewhere in there, there's going to be form to that energetic something. So what I've discovered in dealing and connecting with other people is that I've become somewhat of a laboratory myself to be a guinea pig for other people so that I can understand what they're going through, and then I can take it perhaps maybe one more step or one more level and get it from an energetic perspective to put it down into what they experience as a mental or emotional experience. And I'm going to give you an example. The last video that I did, the one Twin Flames, Can I Have More Than One? I fully realized when I put it up that it was going to evoke a lot of emotional responses from people. And it did. And I want to ensure all of you that if I can't handle criticism and judgment, as some of you think that I can't, I sure as hell wouldn't have put up the video. You need to think about that for a moment. But one of the things that I have noticed is we have some twin flames, and I'm going to get into the twin flame thing here for a moment, who have separated from their twin flame. And I've watched some of these because I'm a member in a lot of Facebook groups, a lot of twin flame Facebook groups. I can see the emotional attachment to the twin flame phenomena or the supposed twin flame. And they wonder why they can't get together, period. Because they're still trying to perceive, template, exist, and get it together from the emotional experience of love from the solar plexus. By the responses and the comments that I see, it's all emotional. Every one of the comments that I saw in the video that was negative was emotional. It was an emotional defense mechanism for their particular belief system, and they responded by transferring their judgment and criticism as they perceive it on me. I understood that. But what they don't realize is they're going through a process. And this process is going to continue in all of us until we make a transition. Another part of the process, again, to put it into words, is you can go into the situation here with the twin flame, and you can go into the situation of hanging on to it from the emotional perspective. You can look down every avenue, run down every avenue. You can look for support from everywhere that you want, and you can deny it, all right, that you can't have your twin flame replaced. But the truth of the matter is you can, and quite easily, in fact. Quite easily. But the situation here is this, is you're locked into that emotional experience. It's no wonder that you can't be with your twin flame because you can't get beyond your emotional self. So you're going to go through this experience, the intensity of it. You're going to have other people push your buttons. There's going to be new information come along that's going to push your buttons. And you're going to get so emotional about it, you're going to make yourself sick, literally, in the sense that the universe is going to keep attracting to you situations, people, and circumstances that are going to keep pushing your triggers or your emotional buttons until you finally give it up and let it go and be more open. Again, we think ourselves to be such a superior species on this planet, and actually we're quite stupid when it comes right down to it. We are all very small-minded, myself included, all right? We have no perception of a bigger aspect of ourselves at all because we're so intense and so dictated to holding on to that emotional aspect of ourselves and not letting it go, which brings me back to the energetic situation. So what happened? We get people who have had a Kundalini awakening, a heart center awakening. They get into anxiety attacks, states of depression, dark night of the soul, if you want to call it that. But I've noticed something in these patterns, and I've noticed something with people. Because Nicole and I, one of the things I love so much about the Twin Flame community is you've given me so much experience, so much information from all of the difficulties, the joys, the sorrows, the whatevers that you've all gone through. I'm a walking damn encyclopedia of Twin Flame experiences and information. That's not bragging. That's simply stating a fact. I know my stuff. And what happens is when you have people that do this, and you get into this anxiety, you get into the panic attacks, you get into the problems with the digestive system, problems with this, you get into what I call a looping type of thing. And what I've seen is people go through, say, for example, the dark night of the soul. Okay, you know what it feels like, a lot of you do. The depression, the anxiety, the mental pain, the suffering that goes on with it. I went through it also. I went through the dark night of the soul when I had the first loop phase of the dark night of the soul. I was in it for 3 months. So I know what you're talking about when you tell me about it. It sucks big time. And sometimes when you have a relationship or a union or a soulmate or whatever kind of connection that goes down, it can initiate a dark night of the soul. What happens is, in the loop, when you get there, what happens is it's going to come up again. I've gone through the initial dark night of the soul. I'll use that one for an example first. And I've gone through it several times over the years of the dark night of the soul. But I noticed a pattern. The pattern is it was less than the first time, the second time. The third time, it was less than the second and the first time. And the loop gets smaller and smaller and smaller until finally, based on the individual and how much you have been locked into your emotional loop, as it were, in some way, the pattern keeps continuing until it's all gone. And you have surrendered, given up, and you have been, I'm going to say, you have been elevated or vibrated from the emotional resistance to heart center existence at this particular point. And this is what is going on with people right now. Take the same thing for, this happened to me recently, and I went through it. Wait a minute, hang on, this is right too. I actually thought it, just had a aha moment myself here. I mentioned that I had gone through this for the third year, the second year. The very first year that this happened, just prior to it, I went through a period where I went through the death and dying thing, that I became obsessed with the death and dying. Okay, I didn't think about anything for weeks on end about death and dying. It seemed to be some kind of magnificent obsession that I went through in that particular situation. And all of a sudden, it started to go into this loop phase, and then gradually it started to fade. Even now, it still comes up every once in a while, but the loop is getting smaller, and it's not really significantly important in my life anymore. But the other thing that happened is this, and I've noticed this, and I'm going to get into another part that's very important here also, that people are not getting, they're not understanding this. I started having, if you can believe this, panic attacks. I was getting to the point where I'm afraid to go outside. I'm afraid to leave the house. I'm afraid to get into the car and drive. I'm afraid something might happen to me, or I'm just afraid of being afraid. And, because I'm older, you kind of think that that's kind of a natural kind of thing. But no, it's not natural, because I've seen just as many people in their 20s, in 30s and 40s going through it much worse than even I was. But when I had a chance to talk to them, I found out that they had had a heart center awakening. They had begun the Kundalini awakening. And I go, aha, here we go. So what's happening is this is happening to all age brackets in our society. And another point that I discovered is, why am I having panic attacks about going outside? I never was ever like that I love to go and do things, but I always like to come home too. And I thought, well, I'm just getting older and the circle of my vibrations getting smaller. I just want to be a homebody. But no, it came to me not this year, but the past year. I was thinking about my mom, who's passed away some years ago, and she had serious panic and anxiety attacks even when she was in her 30s and 40s, and I can remember them. I can remember them very well. And it kind of hit me, wow, okay, now how come all of a sudden I am showing the manifestations of the signs of panic attacks were very similar to my mother? And then I got it. If you have in your family or your genetic makeup mental conditions, now I'm going to call them conditions, I'm not calling them diseases because I don't believe in mental diseases or disorders, mental conditions that have been brought up in your family, whether you believe it or not, you've all been templated genetically, hereditarily, mentally, if I can put it that way, with, and in your third body, with exactly the same templates and or belief systems that your parents have, relatively speaking, and habits, and you're going to manifest them somewhere along the line as you go through this evolutionary process. So again, the important thing to remember is the loop. I was speaking to someone the other day, and the party is involved with a twin flame that's not going well, and the thing of the situation is the person was thinking, oh, well, if it doesn't manifest, I'm literally going to die. If it's the end of the world, it's my twin flame, and yada, 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 and it goes on and on and on. You have to keep in mind that the energy flowing through us is very intense at this particular point in time, and it electrifies all of this system. So keep in mind what is happening again, as I mentioned. We are transitioning in an evolutionary process from emotional existence and resistance to heart center existence and creativity. This process is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 6 months. It's not going to happen in 10 years. It's going to take 3 or 4 generations of people for this to be cleansed through the system. And some people are going to experience this as being very difficult. And there are a lot of people on the planet, depending upon the culture and location on the planet, who haven't even begun the process yet, much less had a heart center awakening or began a Kundalini awakening. There are still people who are not there yet. So what you have is you have a diversity of individuals at different levels, vibrations, or belief systems contained within the emotional body triggers and the evolutionary process who are beginning to wake up. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist sitting on the street eating a banana to figure out we're going to have some confusion. Because when we have the confusion, what takes place is you have a whole lot of people giving information before they understand the process that they themselves are going through, and all they can give you is what they've experienced, no matter how they color it up, if it's coming from angels or ascended masters or whomever, even higher self. One more point that I want to emphasize in here also. Just because a person makes connection with their higher self does not mean they're highly evolved. Higher self, as I understand it and have learned, is also in a process of evolution and has to grow and become part of you as an energetic system also. So just because you get information from higher self doesn't mean it's the end-all be-all. I, above all people, know that for certain in that perspective. So the emotional resistance that so many are feeling right now is because their belief systems are challenged. And I'm going to repeat this point because I know this is important for a lot of people. You're going to attract to you, no matter who you are, male, female, and where you are in your evolutionary process. Some of you will want to call it spiritual awakening. This I can promise you. You're going to attract to you situations, people, and experiences that are going to push your emotional buttons and belief systems, whether you like what I had to say or not. It's going to happen. The evolutionary process has a new template in store for humankind. All right? If we think, as a species, that we're above and beyond it, we're in for a very big surprise. Our society, at this particular point, is in serious need of a makeover. That makeover first begins with you as an individual, and then with these 3 concepts, of which I've spoken about before, which should start to becoming important to everyone. Love, relationship, and sexuality are the 3 prime things that need to change in our society. Our society today is the end result of those 3 basic premise belief systems. And right now, it's radiating and emanating basically in the average person at 75 to 80% strictly from the solar plexus chakra or the emotional experience of that. The transition is taking place, and everyone must go through this process, for lack of a better word, the initiation, the elimination, the recycling, the retooling. So that what happens is we're expressing from up here in the heart center as opposed to expressing down here. In other words, what I'm going to say to you is this. You will be able to express anger, if that's what you feel, but up here in the heart center, and it will manifest differently. You won't be triggered emotionally as you were in the past. You will be able to express the anger in a different vibration and a pattern, and all of the impurities of it will be exhausted through the back of the heart center chakra for you automatically. So this is the transition that is taking place. So it's not all a bed of roses and a bowl of cherries, as everyone likes to think it is. And the role of twin flames here at this particular point is to, first of all, establish that template within themselves of balance and equal vibration through a masculine-feminine balance of self, which I'm going to get into in another video here shortly. I don't want to make this one too long, so some of you people fall asleep and get bored on me. Anyway, so this is what is going on at the moment. We're going through a very accentuated and very serious process for all of us. It's going to create a lot of confusion in individuals, but remember the loop that I talk about. No matter what you're going through at the moment, what kind of mental or emotional experience, or if you have a difficulty with other people, or your difficulty with a relationship, your twin flame union is not going well, it's because you need to let go of the emotional aspect and let it transition up into the heart. Remember what I said in the beginning about the 3 years now that I've been going through this, and I finally understood what's going on, because now what's happening is this, is I have had in the past experiences of the heart center moving beyond the spin. I don't have a spin anymore. To me, it just feels like an open canyon in the middle of my chest, which extends from under my chin down to my tailbone. That's how I feel it. Maybe some of you who can see it, if you can. I don't see it, so, but I feel. So I know what's there. And the process of getting there means you have to let go. And the reason that I say that is because I'm going through another process at this particular point. I have to say this, that I find myself getting so detached from the physical world that, and some people are going to think I'm really being arrogant here with this comment, but I'm finding some of the information and some of the stuff that some of you do and the things that you get all distraught and emotional about, and you just get, oh, you're into it. I just find it so immature. So, like, what are you doing? Like, it's time to grow up, peeps, you know? Like, let it go. You know, your twin flame left you. So what? Let it go. Whatever came to you initially in the beginning with your twin flame, hey, something better coming along anyway. Sooner or later. If you got there once, you can get there twice. If you got there twice, you can get there again. But the key is the process in you has to happen first to stabilize it in that particular perspective. Remember the loop. Each time you get into a difficult phase, the loop will take it smaller and smaller and smaller until finally it disappears. Because I'm seeing so many people are in desperation mode at this moment, and I'm seeing it more and more all the time, of hanging on to their belief systems. And when they're hanging on to their belief systems, they use all those old soliloquies. Oh, you're arrogant, you're this, you're that, you're judgmental, and this and that. That is simply defense mechanism from the emotional body being expressed in a way, shape, or form, and they use all of those new age expressions and tools, and oh, no one is right, no one is wrong, and it goes on and on and on like dribble in that perspective. But the evolution process is going to continue. And if you're in a stage right now where you're in the loop, no matter how difficult it is, remember, it's your emotional body transitioning the energy from the emotional solar plexus chakra to having it transition up into the heart center. It's a temporary experience. The longer that you are stubborn and bullheaded and hang on to old belief systems, and trust me, I know all about this, because I am probably one of the most bullheaded person on the planet when it comes to this. I've had a very difficult time letting go of some of the belief systems that I have, especially when it comes to twin flames. I have now an open door policy when it comes to twin flames and what I've been absorbing in knowledge and information that I'm getting. And in doing so, I'm getting even more understanding and more information that's coming in. And just for some of you that I annoy, I got some good news for you. I'm going to be here for a long time yet. And I'm going to keep annoying you as much as I can because I love my job. That's what I'm here for. Hope you, just kidding. Hope you, no, I'm not. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, everybody.